drift happens. It happens to all people. It happens to Christian people. It's happened ever since Adam and Eve and the fall of man, and it's happened ever since Jesus came to the world, and ever since we came to Jesus. We all have a proclivity, a tendency to drift. Our family was out at the Matanzas Inlet. On one side is the ocean, and the other side of the water, the water starts to flow up into the Matanzas River. And that's cool. It's a cool place because the water is often low enough that your dogs, your kids, you can kind of wade most of the way across the wide mouth of the river all the way across to the other side. So it seemed like the perfect place to bring the paddleboard with the family, and we camped out on the inlet on the one side, and then I started to paddle over to the other side of the river. And as calm and as low as the water seemed to look, it had this really, really strong current. So when I came back across, I had to paddle hard and diagonally against the current just to make it straight across back to our side. Well, it took a bit of focus, it took hard work, but I got back to where our family was camped out, and I took a breather. Then our 16-year-old Noah and his friend Chloe wanted to take the paddleboard across to the other side, the deserted side. So I let him know, hey, the current is stronger than it looks. It'll suck you up that river if you're not careful, especially on the way back. You know, and he listened, he understood, he agreed in the way that any 16-year-old does. And he set off with Chloe across to the other side. And they did drift a bit getting over to the other side, but I was watching them because that's what dads do for their 16-year-old sons and their friends heading out solo. But from their body language, I could tell that they were not distressed over the drifting that it took, to kind of go over to the other side. Hey, they got to the other side. That's what mattered. They walked around, they explored, they had fun, but I kept watching when they got on the board back to find their way back. I was a little concerned, that because of their drifting on the way over there, their board was already at a point further up the river than I would have started back. I was also a little concerned that their body language said that they were not concerned. They looked fine, they looked happy, everything's normal. I was also concerned when I saw him trying to cut straight across the current instead of at an angle against it. But still their body language, even drifting, it seemed okay, like, hey, everything's all right. But I kept watching for it. When it would happen. What? Well, to the naked eye, from a far distance, it's almost undetectable. But from a father's eye, watching the body language, almost reading the mind of his child, it's detectable to the very millisecond. At some point, my son was going to have an awakening. A realization, a light that will go on in his mind, even a quiet voice inside telling himself, something's not right. I have drifted off course. Something needs to be done, and needs to be done now to get back on course. That is an awakening. As my son kept drifting up the current, I was too far to help or call out for instructions, so I kept looking for it. I knew it was coming. Wait for it, drifting, wait for it, and then it happened. In a millisecond, from football fields away, the dad eyes could see it. My son's head just simply turned both ways. And then a little wave of panic, you could just see a flinch in him. It was the awakening that he needed. A realization that he had drifted, that trouble awaited him if he did nothing, and he needed to do something to correct his course. I've felt that feeling before, and you have too. You felt it in your life, your work, your family, your relationships, in your situations, in finances, in issues of character, habits, attitudes. You felt it spiritually too. Just a realization that you were off course, even by a little, and you needed to right the ship before it got any worse. It's like what Paul says in Romans 13:11. He says, look around. Kind of keep a gauge on what's around you and understand this present time that you're living in. The hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, to awaken, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. Sometimes that awakening is a nagging feeling, or it's a split-second awareness. But you realize that you have drifted off course, and a change, a response, an action is needed to get back on track. Awakenings are actually good things. They're God's gifts, often his little whispers to us so we won't stray or drift too far off course from him, and to get back on track with him. We experience them a lot just as humans. And often becoming a Christian only accentuates and fine-tunes our sensitivity to the awakenings, the convictions, the leadings that we feel inside to sense the difference between where we are and where we want or need to be. See, Jesus said there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So the father divided his property between the boys. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, and he set off. I'm going to blaze my own trail. With his inheritance, with his paddleboard, I don't know, for a distant country, and there he squandered his wealth in wild living. Uh-oh, the money's gone. I mean, that's an alarm clock right there. But he hits snooze because he doesn't head back home. Like many of our kids head back home when the money's gone. After he spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. Oh, there's a famine, and it's just in your country. But you may want to read the writing on the wall. Head back home. But he doesn't. Instead, he went and he hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. Good Jewish boy, or any boy for that matter, feeding pigs. Come on, that's got to be a sign that things are not going in the right direction. But when he starts longing to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, it's like, danger, Will Robinson, danger, danger, alert. You're hankering for some pig slop, man. Wake up. But no one even gave him pig slop or anything. Wow, could he have had any more wake-up calls to go back home to his dad? Well, something in all of that jarred him awake. Because I love what Jesus says next about the guy. When he came to his senses. See, an awakening is an inner feeling, an inner sense, a conviction, a leading, a jolt of reality that helps kickstart you to your senses. And the first awakening that we see happening in the prodigal son, and the first awakening that we are going to unpack today, is this awakening to longing. That's when we're just going along in life and you start to think, there's got to be more than this. In those longings, you may feel lost, you may be heartbroken, you may get anxiety-ridden, you may feel out of control. But God, in that time, may just see that you are in a better place than you might think, because you're actually closing in on getting back on course. You see, when I was watching Noah and Chloe being pulled up the river by that strong current, I was getting anxious. He was drifting too far. He was football fields away from me now. But can I tell you something? When I saw my son have this awakening in him that he was off course and he needed to correct, that's when I knew he's going to be okay. Everything's going to turn out all right. When I saw him turning his head both ways, realizing his predicament and then turning around and turning it on, paddling like a fanatic to get back on course. That's when my anxiety subsided because I knew he got this.